Hi, I'm Peter, the Director of Technology at Solid Digital. Websites last a long time. Building a website is a several-month-long project, but owning a website, it usually lasts years. So it's really important to maintain your website. The more content you create, the messier your site gets. So you have to make content cleanup a regular thing you do. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming to do content cleanup, especially if you haven't done it in a while. So today I'm going to go over a technique that you can use to clean up hundreds or even thousands of posts all at the same time. This is going to rely on a tool called WP All Import Pro and WP All Export Pro. These can help you quickly clean up many posts. And you should know that WP All Import is a versatile tool, so you can do many things with it. In this video, I'm going to focus on how marketing teams can use it to clean up taxonomies specifically. If you're not comfortable with working with code, there's not a lot of code, but there's definitely some coding involved. You might need a developer's assistance to go through the process I'm going to describe. And just as a reminder, you should always test your changes on staging before running any changes on production. Most hosting platforms like WordPress Engine or Cloudways make it really easy to set up a staging site. You can even set up a test platform using Local. That's a tool that you can use to set up WordPress on your own computer. Let me show you how to clean up taxonomies using WordPress All Import and Export Pro. To do this, it's going to require 9 steps. So 9 steps, it does sound like a lot. Don't worry. I've broken down the process into so many steps for clarity and to make the process as easy as possible to follow. Once you get comfortable with using WP All Import and Export Pro, you'll unlock a powerful tool that you can use for many things, and you'll be wanting to use it in all sorts of different areas. So in this video, first I'm going to describe the steps that you have to go through for the cleanup process. Then, using a live demo on a local environment I set up, that's the screen you see in front of you, I'll show you how to do this cleanup. You can use the timestamps below in the YouTube video to jump to the sections that you're most interested in. If you have any questions about this process, feel free to leave them in the comments. The steps to do the cleanup process are here. The one thing to keep in mind is that WordPress All Import and Export Pro are paid plugins, and there's 2 plugins plus a bunch of add-ons. For the process I'm going to go through today, you just need the main import and export plugins. But if you do other things, you might need either the ACF add-on or the Jet Engine add-on. And just because you're working with metadata doesn't mean you need the ACF add-on or the Jet Engine add-on. Basically, you should play around with the plugin a little to see which add-ons you need. Overall, I'd say the plugin's going to save you a lot of time, so that time saved is worth the plugin. So the steps are, first you want to review your site content, and you want to do this regularly. In this video, we want to focus specifically on cleaning up WordPress taxonomies. If you don't know what taxonomies are a way of binning content in WordPress, of categorizing them. I don't want to use the word categorize too much because one of the taxonomies in WordPress is categories. So the default taxonomies in WordPress are categories and tags. And individual items within taxonomies are called terms. So you might have the category in WordPress, and then you can pick specific categories to add to posts. You can have categories like maybe, podcasts, webinars, articles. Podcast is a term, category is a taxonomy. Understanding taxonomies versus and terms is important. A lot of times when you start talking about WordPress with others, or you start looking at a content in WordPress, you really can't get very far without running into taxonomies and terms, and it's good to understand what these are. You can also create custom taxonomies, so you're not restricted to category and tag. You could create a taxonomy called medium, for example, and then you can add podcast, video, white paper, things like that as terms into the medium taxonomy. Taxonomies have a way of getting messy over time, especially things like tags, because you'll be adding tags to posts and then you won't find the exact tag you need, so you'll create a new tag. Everyone on your team will be doing this, and pretty soon you'll have dozens of tags, and it's a good idea to clean these up and not let them get too out of hand. So first, review your content. In this case, we'll be reviewing taxonomies. Second, figure out what you want to do to clean things up. So write down your cleanup rules. Use simple language to write down your rules. Examples could be like combine webinar and video categories. That could be an example of a rule. Or if you created a tag you don't want anymore, you could just say delete this tag. Basically list out the rules you want to use. The next thing to do at this point is, once you've written down the rules, you're basically ready to start working with the WordPress content. Before you do so, you want to give your team a heads up and say, hey, I'm going to be cleaning up the taxonomies. Hold off on adding content to the site. Don't add any more terms. Don't delete terms. Basically have your team not touch the site while you do the cleanup, because if they do, it could interfere with what you're trying to do. For example, if someone adds a term while you're doing the cleanup, that'll just be annoying for you. So once you've given your team a heads up, you're going to want to export the posts you have to clean up, and you'll do this using WP All Export Pro. WP All Export Pro allows you to export posts by post type. So you might have all the posts that you've been adding taxonomies to as the standard WordPress post, or maybe you have a custom post type called resources. It's really easy to export all posts in a post type. You can also export things based on a WordPress query. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you do this, but the next step is to export the post. And when you export the post, you'll get a CSV. And a CSV you can look at with Google Sheets or Excel, so it makes it really easy to kind of review things at a high level. Step 5 is you're going to want to turn your written rules you wrote up in step 2 into PHP functions. Here's where you might need the help of a developer. And this is where WP All Import Pro is so powerful, is that you can essentially do anything with these PHP functions. After you've written out your rules, you might have made a mistake. It might not work out how you think it's going to work out. So make sure to not run these, not run the import. You're going to want to, you've exported all your posts, and now you're going to want to re-import them and update the existing posts based on your rules you've written. And if you make a mistake in your rules, you don't want to mess up your content on the live site. So test things on staging is step number 6. And once you're certain that things are working the way you want, you can update production. After you've updated production, make sure you do some QA. You definitely, or not definitely, but you probably broke something. And if you broke something, you want to be the one who finds what you broke instead of your users. Finally, the last step is to document this process. Write down how you went about cleaning up the taxonomies on the site. And this is important because if you do this next quarter, I mean, usually you should clean up content about once a quarter. So if you do this next quarter, you might run into the same problems you've run into this time. And unless you write down your solutions and what you did, you're going to be running into the same issues and spending a lot of time doing something that you've already done before and solved. Also, if you document how you do this, you can delegate it to someone else, at least the parts you don't enjoy doing. So that is the 9-step process of cleaning up taxonomy. I'll go through these 9 steps on a local site I set up. I created a new WordPress instance, and I used a plugin called FakerPress. It just makes fake content. That's why it's got that name. And I created 100 posts, and it created categories and tags automatically. I renamed the categories and tags to be like real terms instead of just lorem ipsum. So let's take a look at these categories and tags and see how we can clean them up. So first we'll review the categories. There's events, FAQs, guides, podcasts. Some things are uncategorized, videos, and webinars. Now, webinars are basically videos, so I want to combine these two. So the first step is to review the content. So as I review the content, I notice video and webinar, to me they're the same, I want to combine them. I'm also going to look at the tags. Tags are ask the expert, evergreen, I guess like evergreen content, high page views. That seems odd, and this might change. I feel like Google Analytics does a better job of telling me what are high page view content. Requested and upcoming. So we had an event category. So I think upcoming is, again, also what's upcoming changes with time. So I think upcoming should really be, anything upcoming should be categorized as an event if it's not already an event. And I don't like this high page views tag at all, so I just want to get rid of it. So step 2 is writing down these rules in simple words. So let's start with categories. So categories, I want to combine, let's see, go over to the categories, combine video and webinar, and I want to combine video and webinar into one video category. For tags, I want to, let's see, get rid of high page views. So delete high page views, and upcoming, I want to make sure it's not a tag but an event. So move upcoming tag to event category. All right, so I've written down everything so that I know what the cleanup will do. The next thing is to notify your team that you're going to be doing this cleanup, because at this point we're basically ready to export all this data. So we want to stop anyone from adding content for a while. So I notify my team, hey, I'm doing some taxonomy cleanup. Don't add content to the site. Step 4 is export the post to clean up. I'll show you how to do this. So we're going to go to, so WP All Import Export Pro has 2 plugins, and I'll show you. There's All Export Pro and All Import Pro, and they do one exports, one imports. In this case, we want to export. We want to create a new export. I want to export a specific post type. So I can say I want to export all posts. It says 100 posts will be exported. This makes sense because I've got 100 posts. And now I want to customize the export file. I only need to customize the things that I'm going to be updating. I don't have to export the whole post. So I know all I'm going to be updating is taxonomies, so I don't need content. I will export the ID and the title just so I can get my bearings in the CSV so I can see which posts I'm working on. And I'm going to pick my taxonomies. So I want all of these. And if I drag all in here, it'll add both categories and tags. The export type will be a CSV, and it's good to save your exports so that you can rerun this export. So in a quarter later, 3 months later, I want to do another taxonomy cleanup. It's nice to have this export templated. I'm going to call this export posts taxonomy export. And I'll save that as a template. So we're all set here. Click continue. And the next thing to do is go through some advanced options. We can just leave this as is. And this will export everything that we asked the plugin to export. You have to click to download your CSV here. Once the export is done, you can click on the CSV button to save the CSV. CSVs are super convenient. They can be opened with Excel, Google Sheets, Visual Studio, all sorts of things. They're really easy to get they're useful to get a kind of bird's eye view of all your posts. I like using Google Sheets, so I took the CSV and opened it in Google Sheets. And you can see that we have the title, so we won't know what we're looking at, some categories, and some tags for each post. For posts that have 2 terms, 2 categories or 2 tags, they're separated by a pipe. That's going to be important in as we move through this process. So the next step will be to add all our PHP rules as functions, and I'll show you where to do this. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take this CSV and import it back into the site, but we're going to put the rules that we wrote down, these rules, as PHP functions to be executed on each line of the CSV before, so that the import knows what to update on the post. Let's get this process started by going to all import. We'll do a new import, and we're going to upload our CSV file, 2024. We'll upload this, and we have to say whether we're going to be importing new items, new posts, or updating existing items. In this case, we know we're going to be updating existing items, so we pick that. And you can review your data here. So essentially, you can go through each line of the CSV. Each of these screens is a line in the CSV with the idle title, categories, and tags. We don't need to filter these. We want to go through all of them. We could filter to only update the posts that have videos, webinars, high page views, or upcoming, but in this case, it's not worth it. If you'd have thousands of posts you're going through, it would speed things up, but with only 100, we don't get too much of a speed up by doing filtering. We're going to go through, this is where most of the work is done. So what this screen does is it describes the updates you're going to do. So for example, if I wanted all 100 posts to be titled new post, then I could just type in new post here, and every single post would be called new post. That's not very useful, so we usually want to do updates that are a little more dynamic. What you can do is you can take the data in your CSV, so this screen represents one line in your CSV, and drag a field onto this screen. And you can see the title will be maintained. So each post will have the title maintained. If I wanted to do something like, have all my posts be prefixed with post colon in the title, then this is how I would do it. WP All Import Pro uses Xpath to reference the data in CSVs. Xpath is pretty complicated, but you don't need to know too much about it to use WP All Import Pro. Basically, what you need to know is that dynamic data, so if you're referencing the title and the CSV or categories or the ID, dynamic data is in curly braces. And the field you're referencing can be written in, and if there's a square bracket after the field, it'll reference the first item of that field. So there's only one title, so in title it's not too important, but you can see tags. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 tags. So let's say I wanted to reference high page views. In this case, I could say the third tag like this, and then the content would be updated to high page views. If I want to reference the entire field, I just don't include square brackets. So this would reference this entire string here. I can pick the fields that are going to be updated later. So I don't have to update all the fields here. we know we want to update the taxonomies, and we want to update both categories and tags. For categories, we currently we do have things that are categorized that have multiple categories, and we also have things that have multiple tags. In each case, the pipe is used to separate them, so we can tell WP all import about this, that each post has multiple categories separated by the pipe character, and for tag, each post has multiple tags separated by the pipe character. We're going to want to here, if I wanted to keep everything unchanged, all I would need to do is pull the categories in here. This, like this, it's only referencing the first category, so this would change things. My posts would only have one category on them from now on, so I want to reference all the categories for that post, like this. And same thing for tags. But to apply our cleanup rules, we're going to have to do a little more than this. One of the super powerful features in WP All Import Pro is the function editor. It allows you to, this is where you can write PHP rules that translate your cleanup rules into code. The way to execute code in WP All Import Pro is square brackets. So if I add square brackets, I can write PHP in here. And I'm going to call this function that creates new categories. I'll just call it create categories. And it's going to take arguments, which are the things passed to the function. In this case, create categories is just receiving the categories for this line in the CSV, but I need more than that. So if I look at my rules, I want to move upcoming tags to the event category. So to create my new categories, I also need to pass this function the tags. For the, and I'll have to write what the PHP will be for create categories, but I know I'm going to have to pass the function all the categories and all the tags. For the tags, I'll make a function called create tags. And in this case, all I need to do is pass it the tags of the row. I don't need to pass it the categories because I don't have any categories I'm moving over to tags. I can look, and all I'm doing are deleting some tags. And in fact, all I'm doing is deleting tags because I want to get rid of high page views. And if any post is tagged upcoming, I want to delete the upcoming tag. I'm going to add event category, but for the tags, looking at just the tags, I'm going to be deleting them. So now I can write my functions. We're on to step 5, where we're going to turn our written rules into PHP code. So we want to create categories and create tags functions. If you're familiar with PHP, you can write these functions out by yourself, but I wanted to show that even if you're not familiar with PHP, you can use AI to generate these functions. Just like with code you write yourself, you of course have to test out the functions to see if they really do what they do when AI generates them, but you have to do that for your own work too, and that's why we're going to run everything on staging first. I'm going to go over to ChatGPT, and I'll show you the prompt I'm using, which is I'm cleaning up the taxonomies in a WordPress site. I'm using WP All Import Pro to import a CSV of posts. I'll be updating the post categories and tags. the pipe character is used to separate multiple categories or tags. The categories will be defined using this create categories function that takes categories and tags as arguments, and the tags will be defined using create tags that only takes tags as arguments. Please write the PHP functions create categories and create tags that will do the following. Combine the video and webinar categories into one video category, delete the high page views tag, and move the upcoming tag to the event category. You can see that the functions that are being written match what we asked for. Create categories takes 2 arguments, categories and tags. Overall, these 2 functions look good. There's a few minor issues I can see. One of them is that when the code checks for the upcoming tag to exist, it would match tags that contain the word upcoming in it. So like upcoming publications would be flagged as if it was just the upcoming tag. The other issue is that if it doesn't make sure that there are no duplicates. So let's say this is an event, a post categorized this event already, and it's got an upcoming tag as well, then it would get the upcoming, that would get categorized this event twice. So let's see if we can fix that. So we want to make sure that posts are not categorized as event twice, and that only tags matching exactly upcoming are caught. For example, I don't want the tag upcoming publications flag coming. Let's see what the updates are. Okay, this is quite good actually, because you can see to check for the upcoming tag, now we're taking the tags and exploding them using the pipe. So if so that means that something like upcoming publications would not be found in the array of tags. So that's perfect. And then here it's checking if the event string is not in the category array, only then added. So it looks like we've got our code here that's ready to test out. To test out the code, we're going to copy it using this button, switch over to our export script, and in the function editor, we can just paste the code in. It's a good idea to double check it. As far as I can tell, it looks good. One way to test this, and of course we want to save this as a template. We want to save this as taxonomy cleanup import. We'll continue to the next step. Oh, so when I try to go to the next step, it says leave site, changes you may not be saved. The important thing to note is that you have to save your functions. That's a separate step from saving this entire page. So once I've saved my functions, now I can go on to the next screen. It's going to ask what fields in all these records will be the unique thing that I match a row in the CSV to a post on WordPress. And since I've got the IDs, I can match by ID. And the ID column, I can just pull it over here. For each record in this import file, create new WordPress posts. I don't want any new WordPress posts created. And update existing posts with data. I don't want to update all data. I only want to update the taxonomies. So I select, or I click unselect all, and there's a taxonomies checkbox here. Update only these taxonomies, so I know I'm only updating tags. It would be post tag and categories. I think that's everything we have. We're going to go on to the next page. And here's a final kind of summary, it says. Here's a final summary of everything that's going to be done. We're going to be updating 100 rows, updating only post tags and categories. This looks good, but before I run it, what I want to do is I want to open my post page. I have the current state of posts in my CSV, but I find it's helpful to also just have it visually like this. So I'll be able to scroll through this page after the import and see how things have changed. I can also export the post in a CSV and compare the pre-update CSV to the post-update CSV. I like to have the option of doing either, so I open a page that's pre-update here, so I can do the same after the update. When you run this, it'll show progress up here, and you can see the logs of the things that are going on. And these, it goes by pretty quick, so you might not be able to catch everything that's being done, but you can download the logs and if you want to review like what it did on a specific post. Let's go over to our posts and see how this compares. So I'll move the post update screen to the right of the pre-update screen. So we should not see any tags with upcoming, and we should not see any categories with webinar. So let me see, let's search for upcoming. I don't see any. Let's search for webinar. I don't see any, so that's a good sign. And now let's go to the pre-update and find a few of these and see if they got correctly moved. So upcoming was in post 3 and 5, so post 3 and 5 should be categorized as event. Post 3 was already event, so we have to make sure it's only tagged once, but post 5 should now be tagged as event. Let's look over here. Post 5 starts with preferendas. Post 5 is now an event and is only categorized as event once. Post 3 is still an event, so that's good. Looks like things are working. We also want to get rid of the high page views. So let's look, high page. We can see that posts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 have high page views. If we look on this page, not a single post is tagged high page view. It seems like that completes our cleanup. Now we can go, well, it completes the tagging of posts, And the last important step of the cleanup would be to go into the categories and tags and delete the ones we no longer want. So we can see that webinar has 0 posts categorized as webinar because they are now all categorized as video. That means we can delete webinar. For tags, we should be able to delete high page views because that is no longer being used at all. We should also be able to delete upcoming, and you can see that is also 0 posts tagged upcoming. Now we've recategorized and retagged all our posts, and we've deleted the unused tags and categories. I did this on a local test environment, and I suggest you test this out on staging first. At this point, you would be ready to test, after you've tested things out on staging, you would be ready to run all of this on production. I won't need to export the files again because I did the export from production and everyone's been holding off on adding any new content to production, but I will need to run the import on production so that all the tags and categories are updated on production. If I did want to run any of this, the export again on production, or if I want to save the export template, then I can download it in settings, all export settings. Here's my posts taxonomy export template. I can export the selected file and the selected template, sorry, and it downloads it for me. This is good for your documentation. If you want to make sure you've got a copy of this template, it'll be on the production site if you've done your export on production. But let's say you have a Git repo, or you just want to store this in Drive or somewhere, a template for future reference, it's a good idea. For the import, I'm going to have to run this import on production. So what I have to do is there's 2 things I need to download. One is the template. So I'm going to go over to the templates. It's the taxonomy cleanup import. I will export the selected template, and you can see it saved it, but the name given wasn't great. I'm going to look at these files and rename this one to import taxonomy import template so that I can easily identify the file when I want to run this on production. The second thing I have to download are my functions. They worked well, so I want to run them again on production. I can just copy and go to the production site, and when I go through the same steps I did to run the import, I'll copy in the functions. That's going to be step 7 when I update production. And after I update production, I want to do some QA. It's a good idea to get your team's help on this. So once you've updated all the tags and categories on production, look through the site, again, check the categories and tags, make sure they're as they should be on production, and then let your team know that everyone should look through the site. If there's any archive pages that are linked to, make sure, you want to make sure you redirect from any of the archive pages that are no longer there. Like in this case, it would be like high page view had an archive, so make sure you redirect from there to wherever you want things to go. Um, both Yoast can do this automatically for you if you're on the Pro version. If not, you can manually add the redirects. On SEO Press, you can also, it'll also do some of these redirects automatically for you, but you want to double check that they're there, and if they're not, add them in manually. And then you might have, if you have a list, a loop grid or a listing grid of a tag or category that you've deleted, that might now be showing blank. So you want to make sure you go through the site and fix any issues you find. A lot of times you'll think, hey, this is a small update, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to break. But in my experience, something always breaks. So you know, the question is more like what broke rather than if something broke. The last thing you want to do is document this process. In your documentation, it's a good idea to include the links to the template files, the import and export templates. If you notice that there were certain loop grids or listing grids that broke, draw attention to those so that in future updates they're easier to find. And link to any documentation you found helpful. WP All Import Export Pro has, it's got good documentation that covers everything. It's not very in-depth, so sometimes you still run into things. And then just like any hints and tricks you found help, like with, for example, you could write that with ChatGPT, you just have to double check that the code works. You don't really have to know coding, but you kind of have to go through and think about, like, logically, does what it's suggesting make sense? And it's pretty good at, ChatGPT is pretty good at fixing things, but you have to pinpoint the problem. All right, I walked you through how to do some taxonomy cleanup using WP All Import Export Pro. Again, basically you want to do this sort of content cleanup, especially of taxonomies, because those tend to get really messy, about once a quarter. And WP All Import Export Pro is really good if you have a lot of cleanup to do. If you've only got one or two posts that you have to clean up, it'll probably be quicker to do it manually. But if you've got dozens or hundreds of posts to clean up, then WP All Import Pro Export and Pro can do this work in a couple of minutes that would take you many hours to do. Also, WP All Import Export Pro is good for other things too, besides just taxonomy cleanup. An example would be, let's say you have multiple sites and you're merging them into one. You can export the content from the many individual sites and import them into the main site. I hope you found this guide helpful. You can look at the table of contents in the YouTube video that's below to go to the sections you want to refer to. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Also, let me know if there's any other topics you'd want me to cover in other videos. All right, have a great day.